Good morning. Welcome to Drone Brews. We have an amazing show planned for you today. Welcome to the very first Sunday edition of Drone Brews. This is going to be an EU version, and it's where we have some guests on from across the pond. I hope everybody's doing really well. And with that being said, let's go ahead and bring in our first guest. Some would say he's quite mad. I just call him Ian. MadsTech.
Hey, good morning, Ken and everyone. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Good to see you. Finally glad to have you on the show.
It is an absolute privilege to be here with you and the gang.
Yeah, man. It's going to be a good show. I think we're going to have a good conversation. And with that said, let's go ahead and bring in our second guest. Everybody knows him as Sean, but I know he's just geeking out. Geek Spawner.
Nice intro. Hi, guys. Yeah. Great to see you.
Hey, Sean. Good to see you. Do you ever sleep, Sean?
I do, actually. And in actual fact, I don't appear on many shows anymore, actually, because I've vastly improved my sleep pattern.
Good.
Mainly because I've had to, because it's just become so busy that I just don't. I just start falling asleep about midnight these days. So yeah.
Well, it's good to have you on the show. I feel privileged to have you on the show, knowing that now. But I feel like having the both of you on the show is like a good combination because Ian's been really hammering out some awesome information, not only on the camera drone side, but then also on DJI FPV, which interests me tremendously. So I want to talk a little bit about some of these new cameras that they've released, try to keep it a well-balanced show, and then of course talk about some of these things that are going to be coming out, because I feel for many, October is going to be a very, very long month for people, right? A lot of things are being discussed for November, but October seems to be the red-headed stepchild. So
it's going to be expensive.
It's gonna, it is going to be very expensive. But I think people anticipated it. I think this was the year people are like, all right, this is it. It's going to happen. We've got looks like is it Osmo Action, or are they calling it Action 2 leaks that are finally trickling down?
Yeah, I think they're dropping all of the first names across the board. Yeah. It's been happening over the period. You've now got the Mobile 5, the OM 5. It appears to be the case. It's been leaked is probably an understatement, isn't it, Sean?
Right.
Like, it's been seen on someone's desk.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it was on one of Peter McKinnon's videos, wasn't it? It was actually sat on the desk. And he then went back and used the blur tech that YouTube, for those that are watching who aren't creators, YouTube now allows us to blur certain things. So if there's a license plate you want to blur in a video, or a person's face, and a fantastic thing is you can do that after the video is uploaded. So he actually went in and blurred it basically so that you can no longer see it. But
tell me that wasn't too perfect. That was too perfect, right?
It was
yeah, I mean, he is
as hell.
Yeah, indeed. He is an absolute professional. And you look at people like him and Marquise Brownlee. I mean, Marquise Brownlee even has his little box that he puts his embargo stuff in, his little embargo box to make sure it doesn't go on camera. So, and it was also, if you look at the screenshot that everyone's posted on Twitter and put everywhere, it was so perfectly positioned. Like, it was literally like Peter McKinnon had set that shot up almost to be, the lighting to be right and the angles, because it wasn't like a side on. Is that the Action 2? Could it be? It was definitely and it was both modules of it as well, because it's obviously modular. So it was,
It's quite interesting, isn't it, that they've clearly moved away from the GoPro platform now. That's an interesting observation from it all.
Isn't it a fact that Insta360 is a part of, or was a part of, DJI at one point? Weren't they one of the same companies or something? I thought that was the story when I was at CES.
There's been all sorts. I don't think there's ever been anything concrete, but there's definitely been talk of all sorts over the years. Insta seem to be farming their stuff out to anyone right now. You've got other cameras coming with Insta360 technology in. GoPro's the market leader. I think the Osmo, I've got an Action. It's okay. It's not brilliant. It's not the worst. I just don't think they can compete. GoPro is the gorilla in that market. It's that simple, isn't it?
I think people are seeing this, and at least the FPV guys are looking at this. They're saying, "Wow, this looks modular. It looks like the camera comes off from the screen. This is the next hero session." And I think it's important to remember that it'll only be the next hero session if that secondary module is powered. If it's anything like Insta360, where the screen would be, that would be where the battery is, right? Because the Insta360 is essentially 3 pieces, one of them being the battery. I think the only way DJI wins that battle is they say, hey, we're going to make it to where this screen, you take it off, this camera still powers. And you can use this little vision, this little monitor basically to set up your shot. That would be amazing if they did that. But it's if they do that. That's a hard ask, I think.
And it's gyro data as well.
Right.
From the FPV side, everyone wants gyro data. GoPro's image stabilization is second to none, and then add on top of the post stabilization, which is fantastic. My only concern is I don't think DJI will really be looking at the FPV market.
No.
The numbers are too small.
Yeah, they're too small, but I feel like they've done a pretty good job. Who would have thought they would have released an FPV drone, right? Like who would have thunk it? If you would have told me DJI is releasing an FPV drone this year, I would have been like, you're crazy. You're crazy. But then they did it. But I think with them, it's, they're going to go whatever the hottest topic is. And FPV, I still think, is a hot topic for them. Right. And there's got to be somebody to fill that void. And, I hope I'm wrong, though. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do that. Yeah.
A lot of people are looking at it. And as you say, we hope. It's weird because GoPro abandoned the FPV community somewhat. Well, they didn't abandon it, but they said this is the route we're going, and we're not going to continue to make that other camera.
Right.
If DJI can deliver, they'll get a lot of sales, but it's early days, isn't it? It's early days.
Yeah,
it is.
Turn this in the sea. I mean, the other thing too is you talk about the Osmo action being it's good, but it wasn't great. For FPV, it was terrible. A lot of jello, a lot of vibration. But I did always enjoy the colors of the Osmo action. I mean, it was actually a pretty solid little camera if you wanted to use it for, vlogging scenarios. I thought it did relatively well.
I actually ran my entire channel the first year just with an Osmo action. So all of my studios, all of my talking head stuff was an Osmo action. And the field of view helped me from the point of view that because I was running it from my bedroom at that point, so I was able to get the camera quite close but still get quite a wide view in, and it was decent. And I always said the same thing, that actually I often wondered whether they could have made more money repackaging it as an actual camera rather than the action side of things.
Yeah.
Because as a static camera and as perhaps a vlogging camera type thing, but not too much action, it was actually a fairly decent camera.
It really was.
When you then tried to compete with GoPro, as Ian was saying, who are the beasts, that's when it started to fall down. Which is but it is interesting with the FPV stuff, because it is although yes, it's a smaller marketplace, it's a recurring marketplace.
Right.
So it's something that if people crash their drones, and so they need to replace these parts. They want to update it as well, so that it almost feels like if DJI could get the FPV build market correct, that they could make an awful lot of money from it. Because if they brought out a new update and it now does X, Y, and Z above their previous model, then people would go out and buy it. And again, with the air units and things like that, you see people stocking up on them in case they stop making them.
Well, you know what it is? We don't know.
Ever do that.
We don't know what's going on with this chip shortage, and what we're seeing across the board, at least in FPV, is you're seeing companies that were producing, let's say, flight controllers, for instance. FetTech is a prime example. Produce their F7 flight controller. And we see it with Flyduino. All of a sudden, now they have new, the KISS Ultra, and now FetTech's coming out with what they call the G4. And the whole reason why is because there's the STM chip shortage for the F7 chips. It's harder to get. So now they're giving us this G4 chipset. But I mean, it's not a bad thing because they fixed a lot of the issues. I mean, it's not a terrible thing, but we're seeing it across the board. Companies are producing something new, not necessarily because they want to. It's because they have to. They can't give us what we've always known because they don't have those chipsets available. They don't have the product available to create that, which is interesting.
It is. It's funny you say about the Osmo. I was just going to say, it's funny you say about the Osmo is, if I recall, Lewis Rossman, for those who know Lewis, he uses the Osmo Action over the GoPro because the audio input's much better. He prefers the camera overall. So it was a great little, as I said, it was the FPV it struggled with because of the Rocksteady wasn't great, and the Rocksteady doesn't behave well at vibrations, so it sends it completely nuts, basically.
I think the old Rocksteady, the new one, the one that they have capable for the DJI FPV drone, I think that does a pretty damn good job, to be honest. Though.
Yeah, it's really quite good. Yeah, it is. It's a little soft. You see it in the softness in the image. I think that's part of the reason the FPV drone looks a little off. But...
What's the dates that you guys are seeing on that? Because I'm hearing end of October for the action.
Yeah, I mean, I've the information I had, some of it kind of firsthand, is that some YouTubers have had this the Action 2 for a very long time. Again, because of the chip shortage, and they said, okay, we can't get these out in the numbers we want, to just hold back. So people have had these sat in their offices and for a long time. So the first thing I say is, whenever they come out, the videos we're going to get are going to be superb, because people have had a long time with that unit, so they're going to know the unit backwards. It's not going to be, come back next month once I've had time to play with it. I think we're going to see some good stuff from the usual crowd.
We're seeing DJI put things into the influencers' hands, a lot sooner than later, So a lot of times these guys are, they have it for a long ass time before they get ready to go. But I think it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for that, to see it. I thought the GoPro 10 was a bit of a fail to an extent. I was expecting more. I get tired of these brands. They just keep repackaging things. They add just marginally better specifications. The processor's great, but you package it into this same bulky ass, frame and design. It's just come on.
And it's interesting, actually, because of course the king of that is Apple, of course. And then you end up with the iPhone 13 actually being a decent upgrade, and then people are now reacting to that with surprise, and they're saying, look at this battery life, look at this cinematic, look at X, and actually this is a decent upgrade, so they're almost surprised how much of an upgrade they're getting.
I think if you hit this, if you use the iteration correctly, then it's good. But if you don't use the iteration correctly, then it's a fail, which I think GoPro is an example of, not being able to execute on that as well.
No, indeed. But to answer your question on dates, I don't know, and it's one of the things I hate speculating on, because I also don't like the fact that people sometimes hold off purchases and that type of thing, because they think something's coming next week or the week after, and that's the side of the leak culture that I don't enjoy. And if I see an FCC filing or something, or a teaser trailer, I'm happy to say, like I did a stream with Ken Heron with the OM5 launch, where he called me on Skype and we were arguing. He's like, it could be the Phantom 5. You don't know. It's not going to. It's like, Ken, it's not the Phantom 5 because it doesn't exist for a start. So, so actually,
it hits the FCC. I mean, the thing is, there isn't a secret. There's a point to where it's like, okay, we know the only way it happens is if they launch something before they have FCC approval, right? Yeah. That's the only way things go. Where, okay, hey, this is a surprise. There's only a few companies that can actually, pull off a surprise or a shocker, because their FCC filing is after the date that they're actually announcing something, which that's the proper way to actually do a release, right? That's the proper way. If you have the correct infrastructure, you can, launch something, announce it, and then file your FCC approvals after the fact, because it's not in the public's hands at that point. I think that's ultimately what's happened with some of these products that DJI has put out.
They used to do that a lot. They've moved away from. They used to do this big, this is coming in a month and a half, and now they are very much, here's the announcement, you can order it now, and all in 4 or 5 days, and that's a move they moved more towards. And I think
that's free advertisement for them, though. You know what I mean? They're counting on people like us or whoever to dispense this information, right? They're counting on this. We're feeding this hype beast, essentially, that becomes their marketing machine, and they spent $0 on it. They spent $0. You type in Mavic 3, for instance, they spent $0 on that marketing for the vast majority of it, right? That's crazy. Think about that. That's nuts.
I think they got bit on the Mavic Pro. For those who remember back, the Mavic Pro was actually 8 weeks delayed. They announced it, they said it'll come out, and then there was this 8-week period where they couldn't deliver because of a problem with the manufacturing. And after that, they changed how they do things, and now it's very much I've been lucky to be involved in a few launches, and a lot of the time it's very last minute. You know,
Right.
it's only recently they've started to get stuff into people's hands, and I suspect that's more to do with the chip shortage than them wanting. They probably had a date in their minds where they wanted to go, sent them out to the KOLs, and then suddenly realized they can't build enough of them in time. For instance, that's what happened with the FPV drone. You know, the FPV drone was meant to launch in February.
Yep.
All of the rumors were actually correct. It's just it was knocked back to April simply because they weren't ready.
Yeah, you almost wonder if they sit there and they have these leaks to sort of feel out the market, feel out the interest, to determine whether or not they have enough supply to meet the demand.
Yeah. I mean that is interesting because again, it's always interesting when you have the Best Buy leak or the accidental purchase from Best Buy as well.
That always kills me. You know, that always kills me.
Perhaps the first one was genuine. Perhaps a Best Buy somewhere did do that. But you know, as Ian knows from his background, the level of permissions to release things onto tills and allow things to get purchased and that type of thing, those, in my opinion, those purchases weren't necessarily accidental. They're not completely set up, but you know, we'll leave one on the shelf, and if someone buys one today, which obviously they're going to because it's the Mini 2 or the Mini 3 or whatever that product is, and then they know it's probably going to end up online. So I don't think these people that are, you know, with the 30 subscribers that suddenly have an unboxing are in cahoots with Best Buy or anything. I don't think there's some evil conspiracy, but I think it's extremely clever marketing behind that, and I think we are seeing that more and more in leaks. And as far as gauging the public feedback, I think that very well could be it. The one thing I find interesting with all the name changes is the fact that these leaks are still calling this the Mavic 3, whereas obviously we thought perhaps we'd see a completely new name for the flagship model because they've dropped Mavic on the other things. But I've always maintained that they could put Mavic 3 on this bottle of water and sell 1 million units, because the Mavic 3 name has been so hyped that you would have to call it that. If they called it anything else, they would be crazy right now, because there is so much, as you're saying, Ken, there is so much free advertising, years and years and years of free advertising, and a huge hype demand for it now. And
it's you know, it's already trending sort of in the algorithm in a sense. And you know, something that I'm seeing a lot of now is all of a sudden, you know, people believe this Mavic or the Mini 3 is coming. There's been, you know, I'll be very clear, there's been no talk of a Mini 3, period. I don't see it happening in November. I don't see it happening in November. DJI is not going to release a Mavic 3 and a Mini 3 at the same time. They're just not going to do it. Historically, they've never done that. They've never done that. And there's no documents or leaks. Let's put it this way. If it was coming, like I see posts and I see, you know, articles, it's coming in November, and they have that set date. I think it was like November 15th.
Yeah, and an actual date. I always laugh when I see that.
There's no data. No data.
The 27th of October at 3 p.m. It's like, come on, you can't possibly know that.
But you know what I mean? You by now at this point, giving the time span between October and November, we've already seen shit from the 3 in September, right? We've already seen shit from the 3 in September. We would have already had leaks, FCC filings. We would have seen information indicating that. Not only that, KOLs, when they get this shit in their hand, there's always one out of the bunch that screws up.
Yep.
You know, there is every release. I can name every single release and spout off each KOL that has screwed up and went beyond the NDA, you know, accidentally. Sometimes it's you know, on purpose. But we would have had that information by now. They wouldn't cannibalize the sales of the 3 or steal the limelight of the 3 for a Mini. They just wouldn't do that. It wouldn't make sense for them. Even with Autel, you know, set to launch their series of new drones, which I think was poorly timed. I think it was a poorly timed release. I think that they had their hands twisted and tied by the Italian leaks. That's where this all started. I remember sitting at Commercial UAV. I was across from the owner's son. I got a text from somebody and said, "Hey, did you see these leaks of the Nano?" And I remember saying to Max, I said, "Hey, did you see this? They just leaked your Nano." He goes, "What?" And like 2 seconds later, he's on the phone calling his dad in China. So I'm like, you know, it's one of those things that I think they had to push up their time frame on on that release. They maybe didn't want it to, they weren't ready, and they pushed that up. That's what I think.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say, as a I don't want to always be the cautionary guy in the corner about leaks and things, is that bear in mind what we were saying about the Action 2 and how long that's been in the hands of some creators that we're aware of, allegedly. But the Mavic 3 as well, that will have been around for longer than, and in this whole pre-alpha stage for longer than normal, because of Chipageddon and everything. So these pictures aren't necessarily from last week or from 3 weeks. The picture of the Mavic 3 flying in downtown Beijing isn't necessarily a hot off the press photo. That photo could have been sitting on someone's computer for probably 6 to 8 months. So because they're surfacing now doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see it. And what creators like ourselves, and I don't mean to talk on behalf of you guys, but what we look for is the DNA of the leak, from the point of view of this feels real, this feels like it's, and I'm talking in terms of date, this feels like it is leading towards something. So your FCC leaks, your actual packaging leaks, and from where they come from as well, from the people that they come from. And it just starts to feel like a release is coming, and you get that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling of that comfort blanket around you of saying, okay, this person said that FCC finding's here, this is here.
You got some weird comfort blankets, man. You got some really weird comfort blankets.
Big ones too.
Something that a lot of people miss as well, and the thing to be very careful of is DJI will make probably 4 to 5 different versions of a drone before they hit it final. And for instance, if you look back on all the models, there's Inspire 2s with object sensors all round. There's the Mavic was originally called the Maverick. There's a few roaming out there with the name printed on them, but they had to change it because of the cycling company and getting sued. So there's always this sort of DJI deliver a product to fit a market hole, and they decide that very, very late in the game. So for instance, if you look at the Mini 2, those holes on the front are not there for aesthetics. They were originally looking at putting object sensors in that, but decided the market didn't require it, therefore we're not going to do it, because they tend to deliver a product into a specific hole. So we do have to be careful, because these leaks can end up being something that doesn't ever make it to market, and that's the problem with it.
Look at the Mavic 3 from 2 years ago, the Ozita drawings. I'm not attacking Ozita at all, because he is unique in his own space, and if you follow him and you keep following him, then you know what you're getting from him. So this isn't attacking him at all. But he put some drawings out and some things out, and I made a video on that 2 years ago, and now this Mavic is completely different, and that was certain to be coming out very, very soon, and X, Y, and Z. It doesn't mean that Mavic wasn't in development, as Ian's saying. It just means that actually they decided, for whatever reason, at whatever stage, we're going to scrap that and move on to this next model. So we don't know what the final product is.
And you know what? They probably didn't have to do it then. If you look at the market back then to now, if they would have launched a 3, let's say a year ago or something, it's an entirely different market. And I think they played their cards correctly, right? They saw that there was some great success with the Air 2, right? The Air 2 was a wildly successful drone. And they said, you know what? Let's now, this is where you do an iteration of a drone and you make it just a little bit better, right? You make it a little bit better, and it makes the waiting process for waiting for, let's say, the M3 a little bit easier, right? Because they gave us the Air 2S, which I think was an amazing upgrade. Hey, we got a 1-inch sensor finally, albeit it wasn't an adjustable aperture, but I think it was a good enough upgrade to warrant people to purchase if they were, holding out. And they did just that. And I think it was a brilliant move on their part. But that's how you do a release. Here we have Autel, where they're doing some iterations themselves with the Lite series of the Evo, where they made it a little bit smaller. So they made it smaller. They now have new batteries for these too, which I think is interesting, which it's going to no doubt piss people off that have purchased the Evo. Because I think out of all the batteries for a portable drone, the Evo batteries are probably the most expensive. They're the most expensive, portable drone batteries that are on the market today. So that, those aren't reused. And they could have just been honest and said, hey, we can't give you an Evo 2, because we don't have the chipsets. We're going to call it the Evo, the Evo Lite. We're going to change course entirely. And I think that's sort of what they did in that regard.
Yeah, and I agree with you from the point of view as well of the Air 2. And if we got a Mavic back then the Air 2, Air 2S wouldn't have sold as well.
No,
the Mini
it
2
wouldn't
wouldn't have
have.
sold as well either. You know, their other releases wouldn't have done as well. And people need to remember that as well, that we are talking about a multi-billion-pound company. We are talking
For
about
sure.
a huge corporate that takes decisions very seriously and runs things through all sorts of focus group, including us with the leaks and everything else like that, as Ken was saying earlier, to test what the market thinks of something. And yeah, these decisions are banked. Yes, you have things like, you know, Chipageddon and, you know, the Entity List destroying the Inspire 3 and things like that, things that they can't foresee. But otherwise, there is a plan in place. There is a schedule that they'll be running to. Unless something dramatic happens in the marketplace, they won't suddenly say, let's release in October because Autel have just announced this. They will keep to their schedule, frankly.
So let me ask you a question, Ian. What do you think about, you know, Autel's upcoming quads that they announced? What's your thoughts on those?
I like the quads. I like what they're doing. Okay, if we separate two aspects, we separate price and product a second, because there are two arguments to be had here on this. I think it's interesting that they're bringing four at the same time. And I do have a concern, can they actually deliver on that? Because what's more important than the product itself is being able to actually sell it. It's no good creating vaporware. We've seen that before.
Right.
Look at Skydio. Skydio have announced this thing almost 2 years ago now, yet it's still been in extremely small numbers. So spec-wise, there's a lot to like, especially in the air equivalent model, the Lite, and the basic Lite. I wasn't really blown away by the Lite Plus. It's a 1-inch sensor. Great. Okay, we've got 1-inch. We're tripping over 1-inch sensors in drones now. You know, this is the problem. They've become commonplace. But the Lite has got some really interesting stuff. Again, with the vertical gimbal option, we saw that on the Mavic Pro some years ago. This new sensor, and just some nice features, HDR and stuff too. The Mini, I do think they've gone too far with the Nano. It almost, why does it exist other than the weight? And you've got, again, very similar three-way object avoidance sensing.
Yep.
It's good, but what will be the problem for some is the pricing. And
but do you think they did this to fill that void that DJI didn't? Because you look at the Mini, and I look at the Mini, I'm like, you know, I like the size of the drone, right? I've always wanted something super portable. Like it's almost like they're saying, hey, you know, we know that people like this size, but there's a compromise that comes with this side that they're providing. They're providing you a budget drone. And then here steps in Autel, and there's this sort of blanketed void between the Mini and, let's say, the Air 2. And they say, we slot right in there. And yeah, our price is going to be more. Buy it or don't buy it. Yeah. You know?
And I think actually you're going to see DJIs go up, because the thing to understand with the current DJI pricing is that's based on historic chip costings and everything else. I think Autel, it's not as bad as everyone think. I think we're going to see, like, if the rumors are correct, all of this new DJI stuff is going to be expensive and on a level we haven't seen or used to in the past. And it's going to push these models back into the I want it, but it's an extravagant purchase territory for many people, rather than, you know, drones got really cheap, too cheap. It's ridiculous. You can buy what you can buy for the price, frankly, you know. But what I'm really pleased about is, for the first time, we've got a company bringing it to DJI on a multi-product level. So we've had many competitors for DJI. They've all got it wrong. They've all done something to screw it up over the years. So 3DR delivered a drone without a gimbal. Why? Who wants a drone without a gimbal? But they did it. You've got Unique couldn't really ever get traction. Then Skydio come along and everyone was hyped, but they just can't get it into people's hands. But for the first time, we've got Autel that are competing with the Mavic 2 series, the Lite, or the Air, and the Mini. And if they can do it, it's going to be really good, because it's going to.
But you just said something really important with that. You said if they can do it. Now, if we look at history, and history has a tendency of repeating itself normally, they haven't been able to deliver on one singular drone, or two drones for that matter, in a timely fashion. Yeah. And again, it goes back to why I think this is poorly timed, because DJI has products in the pipeline that are ready to just pop off. They have one of the largest manufacturing warehouses to be able to push these products and get them into consumers' hand. They have a massive infrastructure that is very well organized. And then you have the holiday season where you're going to have impulsive buyers and they're going to be looking at advertising. DJI has the power to advertise better than Autel. It's just flat out. They cannot compete with that. I don't know. Granted, albeit they say, I talked to them and they say that they're not looking to compete with DJI directly. They're not looking to compete with that. I still sort of think to myself, like, I get you're not, but you're creating a drone that DJI invented in the space. By the way, I see GemFan is in the chat. My favorite prop company. Go buy yourself some GemFan props. Just buy all the GemFan props.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. Actually, I think Autel could take a small part of the market and be very happy from the point of view of unit numbers compared to their current market share. So I think this will enhance their market share. I think Skydio is a different kettle of fish. I think Skydio is an AI company. I don't necessarily see Skydio as a drone company. I think that it's the AI is the value. So as long as they get some products out there to cover their costs and that type of thing, I think they're happy from the point of view of, in 10 years' time, I think Skydio will be a very, very different company. I don't necessarily think in 15 years they're even going to be making drones. But I think Autel, I could see them doing something. I mean, right. Ian's kind of just put me off the Nano Plus, and I'm wondering if I need to cancel my DroneWorks pre-order for my Nano Plus. But yeah, I mean, the Nano Plus to me, and I think to my audience, we're excited about from the point of view that it's another sub 250 gram quality, hopefully quality drone. I mean, I've said to my audience as well
it doesn't feel like a mini, and that's where
exactly.
And I'll just say, from touching one hands on, it doesn't feel cheap, and I don't know how the hell they were able to achieve that weight. It's got to be from the battery. It's got to be from the battery, because it doesn't feel like the mini, like, it has a lot of flex and it just doesn't feel robust. This doesn't feel like that. And that's where I was sort of like, how the hell did they do this? I didn't personally say, I didn't whip out a scale. I don't carry a scale with me when I go to places or talk to these companies. But I mean, that would be sort of weird.
Yeah.
Also, it would be weird.
I'm going to weigh it. I'm going to weigh it now. Hang on.
I would probably get some, questions from TSA. Be like, hey, why are you bringing this? Why is this scale in your bag? Well,
precision scale.
Precision scale is in my bag. They probably think I'm transporting drugs or something. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like it's not quality. Like, that's my biggest thing. I was like, oh shit, this is actually, and to be honest with you, the whole 250 thing here in the States, it doesn't really matter all that much. If you're somebody who is 107 certified, you don't give a shit about a 250 gram drone. You just don't care. It doesn't matter at that point.
Which is the opposite here in the UK, and not for commercial operators, because it's the same thing. But the sub 250 audience here is where I think Autel could make a killing in the UK and EU if this Nano Plus is as good quality in the hand as you're saying it is.
Right.
And if they, and I've said to everyone, they need to get the algorithm right. The algorithm is king. If the thing flies as well as it looks and feels, then it will do very, very well here, because people are crying out for an Air 2S sub 250 gram drone, basically.
Well, I think they're crying out for an Air 2 sub 250.
I think because our regulations here, if it's under 250 grams, you get a lot of freedom. Do
you guys get it? Now, Ian, where are you at in the world?
UK, yeah,
same place.
Same with us. So
you guys are neighbors.
So we get the benefits. Now, there is talk of, there's always this concern that this rule might get changed, because I think the rule was created with this. They'll never achieve it, so we're going to give them all of these benefits, let's just say, and suddenly it's exploded. That area has just exploded. So I think there's an interesting thing, and I've heard it a lot, which is the bit I think the Autel community and everyone has to get past is, for Autel to win, DJI don't have to lose. And it's an old Apple term, this is.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
That's a brilliant statement.
when he came back, when there was this attitude at Apple that for Apple to win, Microsoft has to lose. And the reality is this: Autel just need to deliver. The products will sell themselves because the spec is outstanding on all 4 models. There's nothing here that, they've blown it out the water in the 250 market. 3, you've got 4 object avoidance sensors, 2 front, 2 back. Ignore the ones below. You've got a bigger camera sensor on the Nano Plus. We've got all this extras. No one has done anything like this. Yes, it's $700 odd, but if you want a portable drone with the best size sensor, with the best image quality, with the best features, that's it. Period.
Yeah.
That's it.
There is absolutely. I mean, when this thing comes out, Autel need to hit me in up with affiliate links. Although I don't do affiliate links, so
what's funny is that they don't do affiliate links. Nobody's doing affiliates links. Even DJI, cool. they completely
they've killed that, haven't they? Yeah.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird?
Our audiences are going to mop up the Nano Plus. Frankly, it's going to be hugely popular in the UK. Hugely popular.
I mean, this looks amazing. I mean, I like that they went with a larger aperture of the f1.9. I think that's a brilliant move. Not that it's going to make a tremendous amount of difference. Also has this RYYB sensor, which a lot of people want more information on. So, Ian, I know you are a super technical person. You break down these things. Can you give us like layman's term? What is the RYYB sensor?
Okay, the basics are a standard image sensor uses a red, a green, and a blue pixel, and they actually use a red, 2 greens, and a blue because you use the green as your luminance. So green to the human eye is seen as brightness. So the way they do most standard image sensors is 1 red pixel, 1 blue pixel, 2 greens. Instead of using greens here, though, they're using yellows. And the reason for that is the yellow pixel will allow both green and yellow light as well as a few other wavelengths through. So the theory is it allows for a brighter image in low light conditions.
I gotcha.
But what they actually have to do is process it back to green in software. So rather than saying that's the green, it's then going, well, this is the level and there's some processing. So the theory is it should offer better brightness in lower light conditions compared to a standard sensor.
And then we also have, it looks like we have larger pixels on this sensor on the Plus. So the Plus is going to have larger pixels than the Nano, and it's going to have larger pixels than that of the Air 2 had. So again, better low light performance due to the larger pixels.
Yeah, because they're still using this quad Bayer sensor, which is it's still a 12 megapixel sensor.
Right.
It's just they do a different filtering system over the top. So rather than having the half inch 12 megapixel, you've got 0.8 of an inch 12 megapixel, which means the pixels are larger, allowing it to pick up more light as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for that. The half-inch sensor, I think, is going to appeal to people as well. I mean, I think that this is still going to be a solid choice. Do I think the differences between the two for the vast majority of, let's say, hobbyists are going to be noticeable? Maybe, maybe not. But knowing Autel and the fact that there's such a wide gap in pricing, I think what's going to end up happening is people will notice that price difference and they'll say, holy shit, the quality is just that much better in certain situations on the Plus than it is on the Nano. They always have a tendency of, crippling one of the camera systems, unfortunately. But I think this looks
glass
good.
Lens on both of these. That's going to be
and they're saying they're using a PDFF plus CDAF lens. I mean, I hope it's glass. I hope it's not that plastic shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
because that's quite common in small stuff as well. We see it in FPV. It's done for manufacturing and cost as well. But I really hope, because if they're using a good glass lens, as I said, this thing could literally be, it's almost a 1-inch sensor. It could be as good as the A2S.
And that's the thing is it could be if they execute it properly. I like the colors too. I think, the red looks actually pretty sexy. For me, it's a toss-up between blazing red and the deep space gray. Something about that little yellow accent in the front just looks cool as shit. At first I was like, I don't know. But, after seeing these, I'm like, shit, this looks pretty good. I like it. I like that.
the funny thing with these is this, they're not the first to bring a drone of this size.
No.
And, Hubsun have done it. But I always said this about these other manufacturers. I always was afraid to give them my money. If you take DJI, you could always know if you gave them your money, you got a great product. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying it wasn't riddled with bugs and it wouldn't do strange stuff now and again. But your money was safe for the most part. Whereas Hubsun and those others, it always felt to me, it doesn't matter how good it was, it felt like they just didn't make great quality products. Whereas Autel have a good reputation. They make, the Evo 2 and the Evo, look, it is I'm not going to use the word rip off. It is inspired by the Mavic series.
Sure.
DJI made that drone first. That it's inspired, but it's a good drone. It delivers. No one is saying, oh, it's falling apart or it doesn't work. So if they can deliver, they will gain market share, and it's good. This is good for everyone. The only problem is what DJI do next, and that's right.
And I think they're in a sense they're waiting. Maybe not Autel. I think when it comes down to Autel, do they sit there and try to counter? It's almost like a boxing match. Sometimes they're trying to countersink the opposite's move. But I think in this regard, I think that they're just really, truly doing their own thing and knowing to themselves that, hey, we have a different market than DJI. We don't have any of that software that restricts our users. And I think they tout that quite a bit. Now, that may change in a couple of years. I don't know. But looking at the Lite series, I think that this is an interesting maneuver. I think this one more closely lines up with the Air 2S. Now, they did add some interesting quality aspects of this. We now have carbon fiber arms borrowed from the Enterprise series, which I think that was a brilliant move. Saved weight, also increased the rigidity. A lot of the problems.
Carbon, Ken? Are they actually?
Yeah, they're actually carbon. Okay. They're actually carbon. Yeah, it's not a faux carbon. It's not a faux carbon. It's actually real carbon.
That's impressive.
Very impressive.
So, which I thought that was a good idea to actually put a carbon arm there. I mean, there's no difference. I mean, when you look at the Lite series, the word light can be perceived as cheap or budget, but that's not what that means. That's not what they're doing here. They shaved an immense amount of weight off this unit by decreasing the size and changing the overall design characteristics. At first glance, one would be like, oh, it looks exactly like the Evo 2. But if you look at the Evo 2, this doesn't look anything like the Evo 2 in a lot of ways. Battery is smaller, so they don't have to have that mass there. So that shaves weight because the battery on the Evo 2 it's a heavy battery. It's really a heavy battery. The gimbals are different. The cameras are different because we now have that additional axis, at least in the 6K camera, which I think is a good idea. And I think a lot of the reason why they did that too is that can help them fix that horizon situation they had. By providing them with a fourth axis, they're able to now fix the horizon issues that have plagued the Autel drones for a long time. So,
yeah, haven't Autel recently announced they are going to start the geofencing thing? I think which might have been a reaction from a regulation point of view.
I don't think they are. I haven't. None of that's made its way over to us. On the dealer side of things, we've not heard that. I don't think they have to. And and if you look at DJI, Brendan Schulman recently left DJI. Right, he was a big proponent for regulations within DJI and restrictions. Right, he was one of those people that were pushing for that here in the United States for obviously a fair remote ID, but then of course he was also promoting restrictions within DJI to sort of show the FAA like, hey, look what we're doing to take these counter measurements. Without him being there, I can sort of see them rolling back on some of those things.
Yeah, in actual fact, Autel's rollout of it was a warning system rather than a harsh NFC.
Yeah,
they have said they will enforce NFCs where countries basically state locally that you must have it.
They have said that, but there's
very few countries that say your drone must have geofencing. Very few, because that isn't the way they want the user to be responsible and regulated. They don't
here
want
in the States. Here in the States, they'll just give us a warning.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's going to come in the form of their ADS-B that they're going to have on these crafts. It works pretty damn good. I've seen it in action now with the Enterprise series now that it's functioning in the software, and it works pretty much similarly to DJI's. Slightly less persistent, like as far as the notifications go. You can swipe the notifications away, at least on the smart controller, which I like. You know, because DJIs, you get the notification that an aircraft is approaching, and you know it's a pop-up notification. You can't do anything with it, so at least now you can swipe it away. The vast majority of aircrafts that are in your space are way out of reach, anyways. So,
exactly,
I think it's gonna be pretty good. I mean, I like the way these are looking, though. I like the fact again we have 3 colors. I don't necessarily agree with the gray color. I think they should have skipped gray on this size quad. Without having any accent here, I think they should have kept it market consistent and had a yellow accent or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Just makes it slightly different. I think the white version looks good though. I like the white. I like the Alpine white Mavic. I missed that.
I had an the original Mavic Air in white, and it was really nice.
No, I like white drones.
Yeah.
I think they look clean. You know, but the orange, you know, has always been a staple for Autel. And then, you know, when you're looking at things from a perspective of you know, a professional, when somebody sees the orange, they immediately associate that safety orange with a professional, right?
And it's easier to see.
Yeah, it is definitely easier to see.
You know, you try seeing a phantom in it, you know, you put a phantom up and it's like it just vanishes.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. I hope they did fix the log footage, at least with these sensors. I don't think they did. But the log footage was always something that drove me absolutely nuts.
This defog mode's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not really used it very much, though.
Isn't it? It's
a dehazer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it almost over sharpens things sometimes. Yeah. You know, a dehazer is sort of, I don't know, software dehazer. I mean, it works. Yeah. It does work. Here's a good look at the arms. I mean, they are truly carbon fiber arms, which I think are I think that's pretty impressive. I mean,
it's very cool.
I think it's cool. I love the rotation of the sensor. I think this is going to be great for that vertical video. Again, we're still getting
on this one, isn't there? You know, if you look at this model, the 0.8 sensor, 4K HDR, you've got the phase detect and contrast detect autofocus. Now, no one else has done this before. They are the first to do this. Contrast
detect and phase detect, which not even Panasonic can introduce. You know, phase detect. Which I don't.
Oh, you stabbed me. The pain, Ken.
We're Panasonic fanboys. We you know, I'm a Panasonic fanboy. So
GH5, G9.
I know.
S5.
Same. Although I am filming on Fuji right now. But one day, I pray one day. Yeah, but this looks good. I mean, I think the colors, Autel's always had a pretty good, you know, color, and they did well with their software, you know, tracking. They're really pushing these colors. I think this is going to be an interesting release. I just think, you know, if somebody has the choice between DJI and Autel, I think they'll probably choose DJI, you know, I would say 8 out of 10 times. They would choose DJI just because they know about them a little more. The only way this is going to be competitive is if the price is a lot better than what DJI is offering, you know, and that's where we talk about the pricing that's currently been leaked or out there. I don't see 2,600. I don't see the 2,000s for the base version. I'm seeing in my mind, you know, anywhere from $1,600 to $1,800 for a base version of the Mavic 3, simply because they have to keep in mind they have to now compete with the pricing coming in at about $1,100, $1,200 essentially starting for these light series.
I think the Mavic 3 is an interesting one because this, if the rumors are correct, this will be the first time in a while that we'll have a drone where the models, the difference is internal as such. So, for instance, if all 3 versions have the same camera assembly, that's unusual for DJI. They haven't done that for a few years. And it can lead to a feel of baiting and switching. And I have mentioned this, that if a user sees the headline spec for the amazing one, but you then buy this one that can't do this, that, and that, you get that buyer's remorse when you get home. That you suddenly realize you can't do this or you can't do that. I think you're right on the standard model. I still find it hard to believe the standard model is going to have the dual cameras. That doesn't make sense to me in my head. I would think the standard model would be a single camera version, and then you'll have a dual camera version and maybe a dual cine with the higher end onboard recording.
And I know a lot of like the hobbyists will see, like they'll hear the cine version and they're going to flock to that let's talk a little bit about what they mean by that and some of the costs that's going to be attributed to that. So we're getting this 1 terabyte recording, right? This option to have this internal storage of a terabyte. The reason why we're seeing this terabyte of internal SSD is because of a thing called ProRes. ProRes is a professional grade codec, a little bit different than what we're seeing on drones nowadays. Most of the drones that we film on today shoot in a codec of H.264, H.265. If you're shooting 10-bit, it's going to be H.265, which is a high efficiency codec. And if you were complaining about 6 gigs, 7 gigs of recording, ProRes is going to be like, hold my beer, because you're looking 30, 40, and sometimes even 50 gigs of recording when you're shooting in ProRes. But there is a benefit to that, is all that data that you have available makes it a lot easier to color grade. It doesn't necessarily mean the quality is going to be essentially better, but from a professional standpoint, you can color grade that, and it's an uncompressed codec, which essentially means like your computer, you can have a pretty shitty computer essentially, and it can edit through 6K footage a lot better. Plus, too, that would eliminate some of those stutters we see with like the 6K footage. I would see. Ian, what were you going to say? Your wheels are turning.
You're sorry. Oh, yeah. No, I was thinking in my head to see, if this happens, we don't know the codecs because, we've heard about it's going to have SSD. Now, if you take back to the Inspire 2, we have, you had originally DNG RAW or ProRes, and then they later added ProRes RAW with the X7 only, which was nice. The thing to understand, though, is there's a licensing issue with this as well. So this is where some of this cost comes in, because Adobe own DNG RAW, Apple own ProRes, and that's why if you own an Inspire 2, you've got to give them $600, $700, $1,000 for the extra licensing. They could go one or two ways. They're either doing high bitrate recording, because you don't need to go ProRes yet. Most drones are 100 megabits a second or 120 at max. GH5, those who own this will do 400, which is still far higher than we get on all of the drones.
But it doesn't mean it's a better
no.
I don't think people understand what the right speeds actually mean in terms of what you see as your final result.
No, because you've got to then end up with long op, or you've got to then go into the whole different structure of the images. And this is where it gets really complex, because take the Mavic 2. The Mavic 2 is heavily held back by its processing capabilities. It's having to crop factor in HQ mode, pixel, basically binning in HQ mode, or line skipping as it's known, or in normal mode, they're actually cropping the sensor. So there's always a compromise here. And if they do this and they put this SSD in and we get ProRes, it'll be interesting to see is if there's no limitations at all, if this is full ProRes RAW, and it'll be game changing. If that happens, it will be game changing to see how it goes, because no one's put that level of spec in a small drone before, apart from the Inspire 2.
Yeah, I do wonder if we've seen with the Mavic 3, we might see the first indication and the first changes in strategy from the point of view of DJI reacting to things like the entity list and being frozen a little bit out of some of the enterprise market in the US, from the point of view that we will see a Mavic 3 in an edition that is almost Inspire 3 quality but foldable, etc., and that type of thing. And I do wonder if this is the first drone that we'll see, because it's going to have multiple versions, because of things like the entity list, etc., because it still gives them that cine drone will still appeal, as Ken was saying, to the higher end hobbyists all the way through to professionals, basically, with the ProRes. It's going to be interesting. I do agree on the pricing. When the pricing started to get talked about on Twitter this week, I went very quiet. I decided not to enter the argument and started, I don't think it's because it's all conjecture, obviously, and it's just another voice saying I don't think on Twitter.
I'm more excited about what's happening in the chat. I've been needing this prop, and I'm having Gem Fan in the chat. Man, I'm sorry. I'm listening to you guys, but I'm also really excited about this prop conversation. You would think I'd get so hopped up about props, but that's how that sometimes goes. It is going to be interesting to see these different versions, and the fact that everything is internal is a little bit different than what we've seen with the release of the Mavic 2, where you had the zoom camera and you had the choice of the Mavic 2 Pro camera. And it was funny. I can't remember what stream I said it on, but I was like, it'd be amazing if, they combined the zoom and the wide camera, and we had the best of both worlds. And then bam, we get that. I was like, oh shit, that's freaking great. I don't necessarily think we need, as a consumer level, do we really need a micro four thirds sensor? Probably not. I don't think the vast majority really will need it. And the other thing is, to have that lower sensor, to have that better low light capability, that would mean you're going to use that at lower light situations flying at night. The vast majority here in the US haven't even probably taken their night training to fly at night. And I think another thing that they need to start considering with some of these drones is to include a beacon at the top of these. That needs to be a staple, right? We need to have a beacon on the top of these drones. They need to ship with a safety light at the top of this. Otherwise, what's the use of having this larger sensor if you're not going to ship it with safety features built in, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
They're adding air sense, aren't they? You got air sensor standard. It is a funny one with the 4/3 sensor, because if you look at the Mavic 2, and I think I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, the Mavic 2 is gimped, is the term I'll use, on the output. So the sensor is capable of much more than the drone is actually providing today. So there wasn't necessarily a big need to jump sensor size. You could have just allowed a new drone with much better processing to take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
It'll be no good if they've moved to 4/3 for one-upmanship on Autel and the others, because that's what it is. But if we then still end up with a gimped sensor or a gimped data rate, and that's my only concern.
What would you consider gimped on the Mavic 3 at this point? Because looking back at the Mavic 2 Pro, there was some mass confusion around that sensor because they thought it was line skipping, and there was I even got lumped into that. And but you look at that and you're like, shit. Was I wrong back then? Because sharpness, I think we perceive sharpness as a better sensor, right?
Yeah.
Which that's not really how it works in cinema
it's
terms.
Too much. The Mavic 2 Pro does subsampling is the term they use. So they take the data from the sensor and throw some of it away because they can't handle all of it, rather than take it all and process it. Then in normal mode, they're using a windowed 4K crop. So you're not actually using the full sensor. You're just taking a window from the middle. For me, what will be gimped is anything except full sensor readout, full processed. So it's that simple. They take the full readout of your sensor. That's then processed to whatever output resolution you
I love how you say process. Say it again.
Process.
Processed. You mean the correct way, Ken?
The two of you make everything you say sound so freaking elegant. I mean, you could be talking about absolute shit, and I'm just like, sell it to me. Just sell it to me, guys.
Hey, Ken, I built a YouTube channel up on that process.
I mean, I just love the way you guys say it. Yeah, I agree, man. It's it'll be interesting to see if they do, but what's funny is these things have been in people's hands for a while now. So I think Sean is right to an extent. When we finally do see the results of these units, I think people are going to be like, holy shit, these are amazing, because they've had a lot of time to travel with them, to get that footage, to make the footage a little bit more unique in a sense. So I'm excited. I'm excited for it, but I do really think the pricing is super wild. Like the guesses that we're seeing are just super wild.
Pricing and releases. Enjoy the leaks, enjoy the photos, enjoy the specs. A lot of that I think is probably very genuine, but my personal only small piece of advice is ignore the dates that you see and completely ignore the prices at the moment as well, because there could be last minute changes to prices with chipsets and all sorts of different things as well. So it is fun. I enjoy the fun side of the leaks, but I just don't like the thing that disheartens me sometimes with leak videos and things is when someone in the comments says, "Oh, I was going to buy a Mini 2 next week. I'll hold off for the Mini 3."
Right.
And we know you should
buy now.
Yeah. The three of us know we're not going to see a Mini 3 before Christmas.
Right. If
we do, I will eat this actual shirt. But
all right, so you heard it here. If there's a Mini 3 in November, Sean's going to be shirtless on the next stream, the next EU stream.
Yeah, 100%. I'm down.
I want to sort of shift gears here a little bit. Ian, we recently saw some interesting things in the FPV world. We're seeing now Runcam is creating cameras. They're not getting blacklisted for the digital cameras, which is super interesting. Give me some rundown on here, because I'm in the boat where I'm you know, I'm holding on dear to my Caddx cameras and the original FPV drone cameras because the latency factor.
Yeah.
So what's RunCam doing here, and is the latency better?
Yeah, it's a weird one, RunCam, because it was never officially announced. It was there was a message put out, or a statement put out from who was it? It'll come to me in a second. One of the FPV channels, and he said that DJI are working officially with RunCam now. I think part of this, I'm not going to say it was my fault because I'm not big-headed enough to say anything like that, but for those who know, I got in the middle of some noise over some issues with some of the DJI stuff, and I do get the impression that in amongst all of that noise, DJI decided they wanted to do something different, and they'd spoke to RunCam because RunCam had made a camera that wasn't officially compatible, but now they're working with them. And this week we've got a new camera coming. I'll have it, I think, Tuesday. It's due to me, which is the RunCam Phoenix, which is
so what's the latency on the Phoenix?
It's still high latency. It's normal mode. It's not low latency.
What is the deal with this? What is the deal with this?
We believe, and this is the complicated factor, they need specific sensors which are 120 frames a second capable at 720p. That's the limiting factor. There is a special chipset on the camera which appears to be readily available. So I'm not going to sit here and blame the chipset for this, because I can go and buy 1,000 units today of this chipset off Mouser. But that's not to say bigger manufacturers. So we think it's the sensor. The 120 frames a second sensor is what causes the issue. It is available because they are shipping it in the Caddx micro camera, which is basically the same as the DJI one. But I believe it's limited quantities. So that's why we're not seeing. So everyone keeps making these normal latency, or you can call them high latency cameras. To me, it's noticeable. Like, you know, coming from flying digital and then going back to analog periodically, I'm like, shit. I noticed there's a difference, you know, with the overall latency. At least, you know, especially flying the Polar. Yeah.
Holy shit, that camera is terrible. I mean, it's a beautiful image. Don't get me wrong. Yes. The image is beautiful, but I make a move and all of a sudden I feel like an old lady turning into a parking spot at Costco. I mean, it's a shit show. I mean, I noticed it immediately.
Yeah, and it's how that image is delivered to you. Something we've learned. I've been doing a bit with latency, and Chris Ross has been jumping in a lot heavier as well. And the thing to understand with analog is that you never in analog ever see two of the same parts of a frame. So, for instance, analog is interlaced, so you get every other line and then you get every other line, but they're from different frames. So you're always got this smoothness to the image because it's moving forward, whereas the way DJI delivers the image is actually in two halves. It comes in as a block and then it comes in as the full image, and then when you've got that at 60 frames a second, it feels a lot slower, whereas at 120 frames a second it just adds a bit more smoothness to it. The latency is lower, and actually the latency on the higher latency cameras isn't that much more. It's not dramatic. It's enough, though, that you feel it. And I think it's as much perception of latency than
what's your experience with the shark bite?
It's quick. You know, the latency is outstanding. It's just the image quality lacks, and it doesn't have the wow factor. You know, I've got shark bite builds here. I fly it regularly. I've got the Scout HDs. I use it, and it's okay. But there's no question, when you put the DJI FPV goggles on and you see the size and the immersiveness of that image for the first time, it blows you away compared to what we've had. And you then have a decision of, do you want to give that up for lower latency? And then that's the question.
I mean, you know, it is weird. When I gave up analog, it wasn't because I was giving up for latency. I was giving up the frustration of constantly battling, you know, shit happening in the environment, and just I would always have to deal with, okay, you know, hey, I'm getting too much noise in this build and now it's translating over to the VTX. You know, it was always a cat and mouse game, and you know, the slightest thing could trigger, you know, one of these VTXs to no longer transmit, you know, properly. When I switched over to digital, it was like magically the builds that were causing me the most problems stopped causing me the problems. And it was great. And I have, you know, very limited problems with that. I still do like to fly analog periodically, though. I still like to fly analog periodically.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
Sharkbite is getting there, but it's a very niche product. It's really being pushed for racing, and I've been very vocal on they need to move away from that because it isn't the biggest part of FPV. You know, there's a huge element to FPV in wings. There's everything. So it's good. Is it an analog replacement? Absolutely. Is it better than analog from an image quality point of view? Yes, but it isn't DJI. You know, and if you fly the DJI FPV drone, and you know the image quality on that, even in low latency mode, is just unbelievable. It is on another step ahead of the FPV system because of the cameras better. We can talk about the recording quality later, but the image from the live feed is just unbelievably good. And Sharkbite's problem is you put it on and you just go, oh, okay. You know, there's nothing there to blow your socks off. That's the term I always use.
And I think that's a common problem with, you know, when people get Sharkbite, they're experiencing that same sort of, I guess first thought essentially is that there's just nothing there that's like mind blowing, and that's what sort of kept me away from, you know, going with Sharkbite, because I look at it and I'm like, it's just not. It's marginally better. It's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I've got the new camera here, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, and I've been testing it, and it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. It's on par with the DJI ones, but it's not just about the camera. It's about the goggles, the way the system. You know, I've always said with DJI, everyone will sit there in FPV and say, "Oh, I don't want DJI; they're evil." And all you have to say was, "Put these goggles on. Just put these on for a second. Just try this." And the second you put it on, they'd be like, "Oh, Jesus, look at that."
You know what was funny is I had a buddy of mine. He couldn't see one image when he would put his Fat Sharks on, or he would put my Fat Sharks on. He had to use box goggles because he had a problem being able to see one image. And he would never buy digital because he always thought, well, if I buy digital, it's going to be a waste because I'm still going to see two images. I'm not going to be able to do this. So I said one day we're out flying and I said, hey, just try the goggles out and see what you can see. He puts the goggles on. He's like, holy shit, I can see one image, you know. And after that, he was like, fuck it, I'm buying everything digital. So, and then he ended up going digital completely. And, you know, I think it made his experience a little bit better just because he didn't have all the bullshit that goes along with sometimes dealing with analog. But I mean, I still feel like analog has a place.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I'll fly it that much anymore.
Yeah, I think Sharkbite's biggest issue is finding a place in the wider market. There's a lot of work to be done. It has terrible penetration performance currently, and it is bad. You know, people will kick me for saying it, but I'm sorry, it's terrible. It's just not good enough. I can go the other side of a hedge 10 foot in front of me and lose signal. Whereas DJI doesn't behave quite that bad, but it's getting better. There's more adoption. They've just did a massive price drop to gain adoption. There's no, you know, Fat Shark or Red Cat have a massive amount of VC money, so they're burning through some of that, which is good. People have been able to buy receivers for $100, but it's years off being DJI. It may never be DJI. Their goal is to replace analog with a digital system, and that's what their goal is.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool. It'll be cool to see, you know, somebody get to the point where they can compete and make a product that's more widely available. I mean, we need to get to a point where we have low latency cameras, at least with digital, that are available. I mean,
rumors are next month. Rumors are that the Nebula Pro and maybe something else will be next month.
But you know what happens is they make it to where they screw themselves, because, you know, you got guys like myself and others, you fly every day, and then what's going to happen is, you know, as soon as these things are in stock, we don't buy one, we don't buy two, we buy a whole shit ton of these things because we don't know when they're coming back, and you have these panic buys, you know. It's just sort of one of those things.
The worst thing is I'm recommending people do it because that's the only option you've got.
You have to buy them in a hurry. I mean, I know, you know, like even like Kiss, I fly Kiss only, and anytime, you know, FetTech or even Flyduino was having things available, I was just buying them because I didn't want to run a risk of I blow, you know, I ruin a flight controller, I have an issue, I pop an ESC. I need those to be available, and I don't want to wait. So I buy, 3 or 4 at a time. Like I have a drawer filled with MadsTech flight controllers because if I destroy one, I want to know that I can walk over there and just grab one. But now they've fixed the availability to a certain extent. It's just the cameras, really. It's just digital shit, which has made me want to go back to analog more just because it's available. And I know if I break something, I can, swap to a different camera, whatever the case is. But still,
yeah, it's November's the hint, but how long for? So all I've been saying to people is I personally will be buying 5 or 10. That's the only option I've got.
I really hope things become available, a little widely available in November, because right now I paid. I'm not even. I'll tell you, I paid $270 for an air unit on eBay. $270 for the original unopened air unit. $270. I needed it for a Cinelifter build we were doing, and it was the only one I can find because I don't trust the polars. I don't trust the polars. Not with that. I mean, the latency. I want to know that I am safe, right? I want to know that what I'm seeing is almost as in real time as it possibly could be. And I just don't try, even though the camera does look pretty good. It does look outstanding. The clarity is good. People are talking about the MIPI. I don't think the MIPI. What's the latency on the MIPI?
It's no better or worse.
Yeah.
The weird thing with the Polar is JB said the latency was terrible, and then everyone tried it and was like, "It's not that bad." And poor JB went back and said, "Look, I'm just giving you my experience."
No, it was bad. It was bad.
And it seems to vary. And I'm convinced on that camera there is something we don't fully understand yet. And I think even the camera latency varies because I'm not seeing it, but too many other people are to discount it.
Yeah, Packet FPV says, "Damn, dude, if you're doing that, sellers will think it's okay." Well, unfortunately, when you're in a build and you're working with a client and you have to fly a specific route, you pay whatever it is to get that done because you don't tell your client no. Sellers on eBay. The thing about buying things on eBay and buying things like that is the reality is most of them are never going to gain traction, and those flames of them raising prices super high are going to get quickly snuffed out because what's going to happen is once these air units are available and once product is available, those sellers, they fall flat on their face and they end up selling it for below, even below cost because now they're like, shit, we can't sell these. We can't sell these. There's supply there. So I think we'll be okay soon. I mean, I run pretty much exclusively Vistas, but more recently air units.
Yeah. The air units I've burnt a few out recently. I've burnt 2 now, which is a bit frustrating. Yeah, I burnt one on the bench.
Are you running how are you burning them out?
Well, this is it. It's 2 different scenarios. One burned on the bench when I plugged it in for no good reason.
Okay.
Just sat there and decided to go up. And I burnt one on landing. Now, the one on landing, I think, was a spike. I'm funny enough, I wasn't using the MadsTech spike absorbers on them, but I've now exclusively put the MadsTech spike absorbers on every build I'm doing.
So I run spike absorbers on everything that I have. I mean, I've been doing it on all of my MadsTech builds. I run the Vistas on my MadsTech builds for the most part, but I put a spike absorber there, and I really have to say that I attribute it to me not popping ESCs anymore. I used to pop 1 or 2 ESCs like every 2 weeks on my builds. After running the spike absorbers, I haven't, knock on wood, haven't had any issues with that happening. But I also run, if I'm going to run an air unit, I run like a Paluo ESC, BEC, which they work great, but they're huge. They're huge BECs, but they're the best. They're the best.
Yeah, it's another level of protection. My issue is, I think on both occasions, I've been running directly battery, capacitor installed, 1,000 microfarads, plenty of safety on that side of things. But I do think at times we underestimate how high the voltage spikes can get because the air unit will take 38, 39 volts. The last one I burned out, it burned a hole through an 8-layer PCB. Yeah. That tells you how much power was going on there to do that, but it still managed to do it. But 100 pounds a pop.
It says it's like the guy is hoarding graphic cards. It is, but it isn't. A graphic card goes in one computer. When you're talking about air units and you're talking about flight controllers and things like that. You know, guys that fly professionally, you have to have redundancy. You have to have redundancy. I have to know that if I damage something, I can get that back up in the air because I make money from my flights. I'm working with brands that rely on me to fly, whether it be for a commercial or a project. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to buy, if I have to buy 6 of them to make sure that I'm going to be able to stay in the air at the end of my workday, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So, the guys that are doing it for a hobby and hoarding things, that's a different story. I fly with a purpose. There's a whole different.
Even then, you use it.
Thing.
You know,
right.
if I'm going to buy 5,
right.
I'm going to use 5 in the next year.
I usually allocate it to a build. I usually I keep 5 Apex builds usually on deck. So if I destroy one, I go over to the shelf. I grab another. That's usually what I do.
There's a difference in the commercial world to having stock to hoarding. It's a whole different thing, because obviously, as you're saying, on a professional shoot, if you can't complete that shoot, it ruins your name, not just that shoot. So exactly, as you say, you have to know that you can deliver that contract, and you also know you're going to use those units in the months to come anyway. So you'll know you're going to use them for a fact, but just you have to have them there exactly when you need them. So it is on the commercial side, it is very different to hoarding per se.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, like, you know, that's the thing, is like, you know, it's always, I try to keep as many builds as I can ready to go. Same thing with the Cine lifters. Once I started flying these lifters, I was like, shit, you know, having one isn't enough. I need to have at least 2, and then 2 turns into 3, because I try not to fly each build back to back to back, because, you know, there's a certain amount of wear and tear in between runs that you're going with on these. So, you know, and it's like, you got a $2,000 and sometimes $7,000 camera on there. You don't want to risk that, you know, smashing into the ground. Last thing I want to do is lose somebody's red.
Yeah, and it's a motor screw comes loose. It's a loose camera in flight. You miss, and then suddenly you lose FPV. It's all possible, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, no, it is, and it's one of those things. I sit there and go over, like, you know, before I take off, I'm looking over the screws. I'm looking over. You sort of scrutinize your build a little bit more with those rigs than you do with the 5-inch. You're just like, screw it, falls out of there, no problem. But with these, you're really sitting there and I'm scrutinizing even how I have my cable management for the battery. It's scrutinized pretty heavily. But I think at this point, you know what? We'll go ahead and we'll look at the chat. We'll take some questions, try to answer some questions. I think we had a lot of information here. I'll make sure, you know, I'm really bad about time stamping things, because it takes a lot of added effort. But we'll go through and then we will timestamp this video, because there's a lot of information. If you're just joining this stream, you're probably like, well, what the hell are we streaming so early for? This is going to be something I'm going to be doing once a month. And I'll probably, you know what? I'm probably going to just keep doing it with these gents here, since it worked out well. I think conversation's good. So we'll probably be doing this once a month. This is going to be Drone Brews, like sort of like the EU stream. So if you guys are overseas, that way you can catch it live. You don't have to watch a replay. Sometimes the replays aren't as fun because they're not interactive. But I appreciate everybody joining the stream. I see we got a lot of new members in the stream here, so I appreciate all of you. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these in the stream here. What do we got here? Not seeing really any questions. I could be wrong. Or just commenting on the chat.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion around the different areas, and again, you know, you get the feeling from this chat, the same as all of our live stream chats, that people are very excited about the new products that are coming. For sure. And there's definitely an audience there. That's exciting from the point of view that there are still people out there wanting to upgrade. I think Autel, the Nano Plus, is going to be the king. That's my prediction, because the mini buyers that want to stay sub 250, especially here in the UK and the EU, that's a decent upgrade. But I agree with you on the other things you're saying.
Yeah.
The FPV chat you're having was interesting, because obviously I'm right on the fringes of that. I'm not an FPV flyer. I have the DJI FPV drone, so I've only experienced the new digital version, and I love it.
Got the fast track to all of that. You know, it's like he's really, you know, and the reason why I like to have the both of you guys on is because you guys are both super technical in your own aspects.
Yeah.
You know, and it's one of those things. I'm more of a bull in a china shop with shit. Somebody has to do it.
No,
but
don't say that.
But something that just came up here. Here's the question for you, Ian. How did Mad get this close connection to DJI? Would be the most interesting question to me.
That's a long and complicated story. Look, I've been around quite a while. I'm still quite, I've been on the scene since late 13, early 14. So I've been around a bit. I spent a lot of time on places like RC groups and others. I think I got like 21,000 posts on RC groups and stuff like that. And when in the early days, companies used to sort of, those who were involved used to send you stuff and just say, can you have a look at this and tell us what you think? And I got into beta testing with DJI. And I sort of fell out of love with forums. They get very political at times, those who've been heavily involved. And you get all of the shill stuff and all of that accusation. So I then got invited to help run their Facebook groups, which I did for 2 years. I was the only non-employed admin, so I had full admin rights. I set up the DJI FPV Facebook group. I was behind the curtain. I was never staff. I was voluntary. But for me, it gave me an insight to stuff that I couldn't get any other way. And for them, they used to get quite a lot from me. It was never official. And then in 2019, I just felt it was time. There were some things I wasn't happy about. I've written about it on RC groups, and I just said, enough is enough. I'm done. And I walked away. I still know a lot of great people at DJI, less and less every day, because they're all leaving. The thing mentioned earlier, I knew Brendan, I knew a lot of good people there, but these days I do know people there. However, my influence is waning by the day as more people leave. I think after the last stunt I pulled, I'm probably not on the Christmas card list anymore, put it that way. But it was the right thing to do for the community at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to do where your best intentions are. I mean, I've had to sort of do the same thing and walk away from things that just aren't, line out.
Look, they're known for making stuff with issues, but when they make a product that can brick itself and the user's left screwed over, that's where you draw a red line. And that was when I sort of put my red line in. But I've been very lucky. And I have to say, look, they've been really good to me over the years. Really, really good to me. And it was good. But as any company grows, they change. And DJI went from being this little company to this massive entity as it is today.
Right.
And with that, they lose a lot of the personal things. And that's the really good thing with Autel right now. Autel is still in that personal phase.
Right.
That, it's the owner's son. There's not many people involved outside of China, and you've still got this ability to make a difference. And I can happily say I did for a small period of time with DJI. But
it'll be interesting to see where it goes. We've got, I would say, a good 30 days, maybe less. Maybe we'll call it 25 days before we see what's coming out, what's going to be available. I think it's going to be a pretty expensive holiday season. Always seems to be, but I think this one will be particularly expensive for many. But guys, that is going to be it for this stream. We'll do another one. This month. There will be a Drone Brews where we'll do it in the mornings. Like I said, we're going to try to start doing Sunday streams a little bit more regularly. I think they work out well for many of the people viewing. All you degenerates, not a church. Blessed anyways. So
it's always hard on timings, because we find it as well, because Sean will know for us, because I do a live stream on a Sunday, which is at 10 o'clock at night, which tends to go to midnight. And that way you're trying to balance the UK versus the US. Yeah. And it's just a nightmare. But you do quite a few live streams, though, which I think is pretty awesome, though. You have some good live streams. And then, Sean, you have your stuff as well, the live streams. So if you guys haven't, I'll have links down below for MadsTech along with Geeksvana. I encourage you to check them out. If you're somebody who flies a lot of GPS stuff, you can check out Sean. If you're somebody who wants that technical, super in-depth side of whether it be FPV or just what's happening around the drone space, you check out MadsTech. But both their links will be in the description below.
To the point where you'll actually see Ian taking stuff apart live and fixing it live.
I mean,
those are the streams that I like watching. Live. well, yeah, but still, you're doing it live, and they're the ones that I enjoy, because you can put it on in the background. I often have it on when I'm editing.
It's almost like ASMR when I listen to
it's him. Awesome.
I'm just
it's
awesome.
It's like, hey, okay,
I'll throw stuff on.
Yeah, I've got this air unit. This happened to it. I'm now going to take it apart completely, resolder this, redo that, and I'm just like excellent. I mean, you really want to watch that because it isn't just talking about it; it's actually taking the thing apart and fixing it, which I love watching for some reason.
Ericacho said Autel came to his colonoscopy. Okay. Oh,
that's the comment that ended the live stream.
That's as personal as it gets, guys. We will see you next time. Stay original.
I want you, I need you, you got me wrong.
It still says we're live at the top. Are we still on?
I think the stream that's going out is the outro. Yeah.
How are you, Sean? Oh, you're muted. Oh, I've lost you.
I want you.